Well, hello. It's good to be with you all. We're here for a conversation about the Ministry of Fuse, which was a 2016 grant recipient through our pilot of what we call Dream Tank for Ministry Innovation. It was an opportunity for our presbytery to leverage 3 new ministry possibilities in our midst. Fuse was the one that was the recipient of the top award of $3,000 as voted on by the presbytery. What was great was we had a panel of folks from various commissions receive, similar to the way that they do Shark Tank, a pitch from 3 different initiatives, and we engaged them playfully. And then at the end, the presbytery actually voted on the winning recipient, of which Fuse was. But before we hear a little bit more about this Ministry of Fuse, let's do some quick introductions. Aware that 3 of us are here by way of video, and one of them looks like a camera with a great extra, which is due to some just challenges with video, but we are grateful for your voice. You'll find out who that is in a minute, but we'll leave it mysterious. So first of all, my name is Greg Klimovitz. I'm the Associate Presbyter here for the Presbytery.
And I'm Kevin Porter, Stated Clerk of the Presbytery.
I'm Sarah Cooper Seawright. I'm an Associate Pastor at Swarthmore Presbyterian Church.
And I'm Francois Lacroix, and I'm the pastor at the Wallingford Presbyterian Church.
And thank you, Francois, for joining us by way of a phone call. So it's going to be great to hear from you all. So what would be great would be to hear a little bit about this ministry called Fuse. And I know that it's been a few years since we've covered your story and talked, but we've heard ins and outs of what you've been up to. But for those who are not familiar with the Ministry of Fuse, could you briefly describe what it is, especially what Fuse stands for as an acronym, and how your 2 churches got connected to it?
Sure, I'd be happy to start with that, Greg. Fuse stands for the Fellowship of Urban and Suburban Engagement. It was a grassroots group that actually was started by a colleague here in Wallingford, the rabbi at OF Shalom, Jeremy Gerber. It was one of his ideas to reach out from the suburbs to our brothers and sisters in the city of Chester, which is literally only a few miles from Wallingford, Swarthmore suburbs. So the intent was to begin to get people out of our silos and to build bridges, to tear down walls, and to begin a conversation, intentional conversations between the people who populate this area, to get folks to sit down together with one another at a table, to share a meal, and to begin to have courageous conversations with one another. And I'll let Sarah take over from here.
Yeah, and so when I arrived in the area not long after, in one of the times in which Francois and I met, he invited me to check it out and to see if Swarthmore might be interested in engaging. And so I began attending some of the steering committee meetings and the gatherings of Fuse, and was very quickly encouraged and excited about the ministry there. And so our congregation in Swarthmore has really embraced this as an opportunity to be both courageous and vulnerable in their work and connecting with their neighbors, and getting outside of as Francois says, the silos of our kind of similarities and shared experience, and be able to share experiences with a broader group of people. And it's been incredible to be a part of this and to be their leader in the midst of it, and also do this with them.
I think the only thing I would add is that there was some intentionality between Wallingford and Presbyterian and Swarthmore Presbyterian to begin to work together. So often there are congregations that live near one another and but don't really work with one another. And we wanted to break that mold and to to intentionally begin to work on projects with one another.
Absolutely.
That's great. I mean, in many ways, I think your ministry has been timely as we are living in a time, not unlike other times, but for our time, that is very much fractured. And it's about othering our neighbors instead of engaging in these holistic relationships of trust. It sounds like what you all are doing in many ways is embodying the beloved community.
Yeah, it feels like it is something that we're working on, right? And we'll get. I think you have some other questions later where we might kind of share a little bit about the challenges of that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the next question we have for you is, what was actually the new edge of Fuse that Dream Tank was able to leverage? Because this program is designed to do that. The Dream Tank is to not only leverage new ministries, but potentially expansions or adaptations to existing ministries. So what were you able to do?
Well, so as Francois spoke about, Rabbi Gerber initiated this program in conversation with a community member in Chester, Corey Long, and they initiated this kind of around a table, sharing lunch and with one another. And so that's how the model kind of grew out, was that that people were gathered around dinner and a meal and conversation. We understand table fellowship to be a place where productive and intimate conversations can take place. And so those tables kept growing and growing, and which was a great blessing to us. There were more people who were interested in coming. And about the time that the Dream Tank opportunity came up, we were realizing an opportunity to try to kind of spin off smaller conversations, one-on-one conversation with folks who were different from one another. And so we wanted to create an opportunity for, if you met somebody at one of our Fuse monthly gatherings where there might be 30 or 50 or 80 people, that you might meet somebody there and say, let's go have coffee and talk some more. Let's go get lunch and talk some more, whatever that was. And we wanted to create an opportunity that did as best we could to take out any power imbalances there, recognizing we didn't want anything else to get in the way of that relationship. So no worries about, am I going to pay for this? Are they going to pay for this? But really allowing people to come on the same plane and be able to engage one another without all of that. And so we applied to the Dream Tank for funds that would help us with a program or an initiative that we called Fuse Together, where we purchased gift cards to help us to facilitate that ministry of having the opportunity for people to get together one-on-one and have conversations around a table. And so we really encouraged people to think intentionally and take this opportunity to get to know people they wouldn't have known otherwise. And there's been some really interesting connections that have come with that.
Oh, that's great. I mean, in many ways, you're talking. Go ahead, Francois.
Yeah, I think too, Greg, that theologically speaking, we as Christians and worshiping communities, we gather together at the Lord's table, and we know the importance of table fellowship in Jesus's ministry, and obviously a sacrament for us, but also I think a symbol of what the kingdom can look like, where we come to the table and maybe we first come as strangers, but we leave as friends. And so there was some intentionality to use that as our sort of symbol or guide for what these more intimate and intentional conversations would be like.
Table fellowship. That's always been something that we've really encouraged in our presbytery, is to see the sacrament as more than something that happens in worship, but something that sends us out into our communities and breaks down those walls and barriers that can keep people from one another. How else have you seen this ministry of Fuse and and these one-on-one conversations, how have you seen it as very much an extension or a practice of the gospel, both inside your church and in your surrounding neighborhood?
Yeah. Francois, do you want to start?
Yeah, what we did, I know when you listen to it sounds so, in a sense it sounds so simple, and yet it's so incredibly hard to do, to get people out of their theological silos, to get them out of their neighborhoods, to get them out of their familiar places, to take the risk to step out in faith, to get to know somebody who doesn't look like them, who doesn't live in their neighborhood, who has perhaps some different life experiences. And I'm always reminded of the fact that Jesus builds community, right? I mean, 40 days out of the wilderness, the first thing he does is he creates community by calling 12 people to join the inner circle and to begin the work and ministry of reconciliation. So I've seen that happen in a number of different ways. I personally have experienced that by creating a relationship with someone that, if it had not been for Fuse, I'm absolutely convinced that there are a number of people in my life right now who would not be there, simply because we just we travel in different circles. So that's been particularly meaningful, and I know that other folks have experienced that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was trying to think of a kind of a specific story that might relate scripturally, and the first one that popped into my mind actually was in Mark's gospel, when the disciples and Jesus are going across the waters in the boat, and there's the storm that comes, and Jesus has to say, they say, "Help us," and Jesus has to say, "Don't be afraid." And I think that this kind of ministry is long and tough and hard work, and we're constantly evaluating and reevaluating how we are in relationship with one another. And it's so easy to be able to say, let's just go back to where we were, or let's just continue, what we had been doing, or let's just, we're afraid, we don't know, this might make us question some of our own values or ideas or ways in the world. So we don't want to do it. And one of the things I valued, and I think really is an embodiment of the gospel that Fuse has done, is continue to say, no, let's cross into that other side, that other awareness, that broader sense of community, that new place of what we can be. And we don't exactly know what that looks like yet. Like, I think we're still in those waters trying to figure out what is on that other side. But our biggest vision, like Francois has so wonderfully said, is this image of the kingdom. We're strangers. We're no longer strangers, but we're friends, and that we are invested in our shared community more than we are invested in our individual spaces. And so, I've seen, as Francois mentioned, I've seen a member of my congregation connect with a community member and who was interested in fashion, and connect that person to another one of our members who worked in at the art museum with their fashion collection, and help bridge that bring a new opportunity, new relationship across the board for everybody, and continue to be in that relationship with one another. And that's been very changing for my community member, to have that experience. And so we see these little glimpses, and yet it's hard work. It's hard work what we're doing. So, but we're grateful for it.
And even though it's still in process, it's already being recognized. I was able to be at one of the group meetings recently where the Interfaith Council of the region was lifting up Fuse as one of the zones of peace. So if you could talk about the current state of the ministry how it's being recognized and how others are seeing value in it.
Yeah, I think we were so honored to be recognized by the Interfaith, the Religious Leaders Council of the Interfaith Philadelphia with Zones of Peace. And I think at that ceremony, Kevin, you'll remember that that Rabbi Gerber said something to the effect of, we are so grateful for this recognition, and we also see this as a continued challenge to our work, that we are living into that vision of being a zone of peace. That's what we're working towards creating, right? Is where we are all live in a space of safety and shared shared peace. And so we have done some, continue, like I said, reevaluating our work and trying to be responsive to all of our communities and to the challenges that are being good questions that are being raised. There's always a tension infused between just talking and doing. And that is we're all the time back and forth. One of the most recent things we've done is committed to having all of our community meetings in Chester. We had been going back and forth in the idea of shared community between meeting in Chester and meeting in the suburbs. We said we want to show that we are really invested in this relationship with Chester, and it's really important actually for us to continue to go there and be there and show that that we're not leaving after 5 years. We're here, and that we are invested in building trust here. This winter, we're going to host a trip for our communities to the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. A couple of years ago, we did a bus trip to the Women's March in Washington, D.C. in a similar way. On the way to and on the way back from D.C., there will be intentional conversations that will be hosted on the bus. And we are really looking to make that experience one that is between the suburban community and the urban community. So there's a lot of those things that we're looking forward to.
And I think those opportunities will help to create a safe place where we can continue to experience the same things together, but to be able to begin to see those same experiences through someone else's eyes, through somebody else's experience, through somebody else's narrative, through somebody else's history. And I think that's what's that's one of the crucial things that Fuse has continued to invite people to do and to challenge people to do.
I just want to affirm. I remember back when this proposal came to the Presbytery, and as Greg said, it was an opportunity for the Presbytery in real time to hear ideas on the cutting edge of ministry and then respond. And this happened at the meeting that was literally days after the election, the last presidential election. And that sense of disconnection from our neighbors. And I thought I knew how my neighbor felt and thought, and now I'm wondering. And this idea of coming in with a simple modality of providing ways for folks of opposite sides to sit and have an equal playing field and sharing with each other, got this response from the Presbytery. How did it feel for you, sharing what your ideas were and having that response at the Presbytery meeting that way?
Well, at the risk of sounding trite visually, when we presented, before the Presbytery, there was I was there as a white male, born in Belgium and immigrated to the United States. Next to me was my friend Clyde, who is a resident of Chester, African American man. Incredibly devoted to the community and just a powerful individual and intellectual. Sarah was there as a you know, I don't know. I guess you're a millennial, aren't you, Sarah? And then, you know, my friend who became my friend Bonnie, who was a past president of the synagogue. So I guess what I'm saying is visually we painted a picture of what Fuse was really all about, to bring people together who would not normally have had the opportunity to do that. Sarah, what would you add to that?
Yeah, just as
You're good now.
oh. Okay, thanks. Just a small word, in that it was just really fun. It was really fun to be up there. I thought it was this great creative way of engaging new ideas. It was great to be up there with Becca, with Beacon, and with Sean, and who also presented their various projects. It was just a fun way to imagine ministry, and I enjoyed the response we got from it. It was wonderful to be able to win and to be recognized with that. We've been so encouraged. We were so encouraged at the time, and continue to be so encouraged by people. And we had people reach out to us right afterwards from the Presbytery, various pastors. One who came to visit with us at a steering committee meeting, and interested in seeing how she might share that our similar model where she is in the Presbytery. So it was neat to be able to see that too, because our hope is that other people are doing. We're not the only ones doing this kind of work, but that others would see this and say, "Oh, well, we should try something like this." So it was fun to be able to do that too.
One of the things that was really fun as the Commission on Resources and what will soon to be called Creative Ministries was the one that kind of shepherded this whole process. I remember your group coming to share your application and basically do a run through, and you bring in your whole team with you, this interfaith collection. And I remember at the end of your initial presentation, one of your steering committee members saying, "Wow, this is what a presbytery and church does? This is incredible. I kind of want to be a part of this." And it was just neat to see the intersection between church, a presbytery as mid-council, and then the interfaith community really come together in a creative, intentional, and dignified way to support this effort. That said, given that this program's being launched again, and the application deadlines will be November 15th as of now for a January stated meeting presentation, what is your word of encouragement to any churches who may be considering and discerning a call to apply for this program?
I think Francois and I talked a little bit about this before today, and both of us immediately thought, "Do it."
Right.
I think that it's a great opportunity to be imaginative and thoughtful, and try something that you have been dreaming about, or been wondering about, and there's encouragement throughout the whole thing. I mean, I think I feel like that was for everybody who was involved in it. So do it. That's what I would say. Francois?
Yeah, I did not see it as a competition, as Sarah, I think, alluded to in her previous answer. We learned from one another, all the folks who presented. We literally learned from one another at the presentation, things that could be incorporated, ways of looking at things. We're called to serve with energy, intelligence, imagination, and love, right? And that means stretching ourselves, not being afraid to fail, if that's even the right way to put it. That I think the Spirit inspires us to leave the upper room, right, and not to be afraid to walk out in faith and to try new things for the sake of the gospel. So again, do it. I absolutely encourage you to do that.
And Kevin, as the stated clerk, the stated meeting falls within your vocation. Is there any word that you would want to have for those that are interested in engaging this program as a part of a stated meeting of a presbytery?
Well, I mean, the reason we're supposed to be coming together is to be able to support each other in ministry and nurture the covenant community of Christ. And this is a wonderful way, as Francois said, to bring some of that imagination, the intelligence, and just bring it to bear. I don't think folks that were involved in Fuse could have imagined how things probably would dovetail with the events in our current events that would make it so providential and meaningful. And Buechner said a ministry where the world's deep need and our deep passion meet. So if there's a passion that you have in ministry, nurture it, take a chance, plan it, believe in this covenant community that we have as Presbyterians to cast it on the waters and see what happens. And that's what this is all about.
Thanks be to God for each of you. A quick plug real quick is if you're interested in learning more about the ministry of Fuse, feel free to engage either Francois or Sarah. You can also check out the Covenant Connection story that we did on them a few years ago, as well as a podcast episode, which we'll put the links available in our e-news, on our website, as well as in the comment sections where this is posted on social media. But as they've all said, do it. Be sure to apply for this initiative. The deadline to apply currently is November 15th. And then the three presentations that will be selected will then pitch their initiatives to the January 2020 stated meeting. But Francois and Sarah, it was a joy to talk with you and to hear about your heart for ministry. And Kevin, I'll see you in a few seconds, I'm sure, right around the corner.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Take care. Thank you.
Uh-huh.